deal that closes is never the deal the model said it would be. And this is something I feel like every acquirer knows, but then they pretend they don't. If you think of a deal like a year after close, we all know what happens, that the numbers are completely off. The deal running it is completely different. And the story you're telling the board has shifted. It's the same company, same purchase agreement, but it's a different deal now. Recently, I did a podcast interview with Gwen Pope, who's done tons of M&A deals. She's worked at Microsoft, Google, eBay, seen it all. And we talked about why deals fail. And people will now blame integration. They'll blame the culture didn't fit. But the biggest reason deals fail is thesis drift. And she gave plenty of examples. Companies that closed the deal, ran through integration. By the time the team was actually executing, nobody could tell you why they bought the company in the first place. They weren't delivering on the original vision of the deal at all. And she's seen that happen all too many times. That's thesis drift. It's not about bad targets, not bad pricing, not bad integration plans. It's the reason you bought the company in the first place drifts. Stage by stage, handoff by handoff, until that deal that closes isn't the deal that you set out to do. The one word for the whole thing, the thread. Most M&A doesn't run as one deal. It runs as a relay race. So when you think about it, you got the bankers that start off, they'll carry the first leg, and then they hand it off to corporate development. Corp dev hands it to the deal team. The deal team hands it to finance to own the model. Finance hands it to legal. Then legal hands it over to integration. So you end up with 5 handoffs, sometimes 6. And then on day one, the people in the room responsible for actually executing this thing and making it work, none of them that were in the room when the thesis got written. That's not the deal. That's more of a relay. We got 3 reasons why the deal thread breaks. And they show up in basically every deal. 1, nobody holds the end-to-end view. Corp dev focuses on sourcing, finance is honed in on the model, and diligence is focused on the data room, while legal is locked in on the purchase agreement. And then you have integration focused on day one. Everyone's doing their job. Nobody owns the deal. So the thread doesn't break because somebody's made a mistake. It breaks because no one was holding it. 2, the model is essentially a snapshot. Like you work really aggressively to build a model, get an LOI signed, and that's it. It captures what you initially built to get the LOI signed. Then diligence happens. And some of the assumptions you had either hold, they bend, some break. But does that model change? It doesn't. It ends up getting archived. Then by integration, that model that priced the deal is a complete fiction. 3, the thesis gets translated and not carried. Every handoff is a translation. When corp dev tells finance, finance writes it into the model, and then legal hears it from the deal team. Integration ends up getting a paragraph in a deck that somebody read once. And by the time the thesis reaches integration, it's someone's interpretation of someone else's interpretation. And that's why deals drift. Threading, it isn't a process trick or it's not a tactic. It's the result of doing something most buyers don't do. You have to understand the end state before you can thread anything. So what's the vision of the combined company? How does the other company operate? Their culture, how leadership makes decisions, how they handle problems. What's the customer experience as one company going to look like? What's the combined go-to-market going to be? And if you don't fully understand all of that, you can't thread a deal because you don't know what you're threading towards. And that's what buyer-led teams front load. They end up front loading. You'll have integration leads in really early because they're the ones that have to deliver the end state. And integration costs get built into the model from day one. So it's not an estimate done later, not added as a footnote, but actually built in, because the model is only works if the integration has actually got some cost built into it. Otherwise, you're pricing this deal on fiction. And having this thesis with integration assumptions, so that the only way to know at every stage whether the thread is still intact. And that's where buyer-led M&A is all about doing the work up front, understanding the end state, front-loading the information, and threading every stage back to what you're actually trying to build. So there's 3 places that either holds or doesn't hold. The first place is the beginning, before any banker call. Most buyers will write a deal thesis. We're buying this company for growth, market access, product capability. It's reasonable, it's standard, but here's what's missing. A deal thesis tells you why you want to do the deal. It doesn't tell you what has to be true for the deal to work. And those are different documents. So this is what it looks like. On the left side, this is what most thesis decks look like. It's a paragraph, sounds reasonable, it's got synergies in there, growth, capabilities, culture fit. Now, if you look at the right side, this is what a buyer-led thesis looks like. It's named assumptions. Each one is testable. Each one tied to a stage where it gets tested. And then each one's got an owner to it. So if a CEO and CRO say 24 months, if the CEO and CRO are supposed to stay 24 months out, that's tested in diligence. It's owned by integration. If we have top customers renew at 90% NRR, it's tested in diligence, owned by finance. Each row has a thread that you're holding. And one of these travels, the other one sounds good. So if you look at these two, right, one of them will actually carry forward and the other one sounds good, but it dies in the deal room. Goes through sourcing, through valuation, through diligence, through LOI, into integration, every stage gate, same question, which assumption is being tested right now, which one held, which one bent, which one broke. Everyone writes a thesis. The move is to write one that's built to travel and then actually use it. Second place is diligence. Most buyers run diligence as discovery. You go in there, you find what's there, you build a checklist, you collect a bunch of information, produce a report, and that's information collection. It's not diligence. Diligence is a rehearsal. It's where you actually test the thesis against what's actually true, where the model gets updated as you learn, where you build the integration plan that you're going to execute, not just before close or after, during diligence. So one of my favorite interview guests in the podcast is Jim Buckley. And Jim taught me something about this. So Jim's done integration for over 20 years, Microsoft, VMware, PayPal. And here's how he builds an integration plan. He takes a big wall whiteboard, taped up paper, and whoever's in the room writes the integration timeline across the top. Well, he writes the integration timeline across the top, and it's basically month by month, quarter by quarter. Down the side, it's every work stream. You got people, IT, finance, customer success. And then he brings in every functional lead into the room. So both sides, the acquire and target, same room. He starts at the right end of the wall. He starts at the end state and walks backwards because you don't plan integration by figuring out what to do on day one. You plan it by knowing where you have to land and walking backwards from there. So every work stream, every quarter, what has to be true at each step to get to the end state. One of my favorite lines Jim has is electricity diminishes over time and distance. So same deal. Every handoff, you lose voltage. And by the time the thesis reaches integration, 3 or 4 translations happen, then you end up with nothing left. So the idea of walk the wall fixes that. Everyone in the same room, same wall, same plan getting built. Integration leads in the room. Week 1 of diligence, not as observers, but as builders. Third place is the one that most people don't see coming. It's the close. So in a relay race deal, signing is the finish line. Everybody closes the deal, they pop champagne, you get a press release, you get some photos taken, the deal team moves on, and then integration has to take the baton and run the last leg alone. In a buyer-led deal, there is no baton. The team that owns the deal still owns the deal. The model that priced it becomes the model that runs the integration, and the disclosure schedule that papered the risk becomes integration's risk register on Monday morning. Disclosure schedules, reps and warranties, most people treat it as legal paperwork. It's a big mistake. Those documents are integration commitments with signatures on them. Every rep is something the seller swore was true, which integration is counting on, and every warranty is a risk that you priced, which the model has to know. So if you negotiate them like paperwork, you're handing integration a list of broken promises. If you negotiate them like integration commitments, then you're handing integration a head start. Matt James. I did a podcast interview with Matt, who runs M&A at Oakbridge Insurance. He's in all been involved with hundreds of deals. So we actually did a podcast interview called 400 Acquisitions and a Failed Process. And what Matt described was year one of the roll-up that he built up from scratch was that most of what he did exactly what most acquirers do, right? They close the deal, then they throw it over the wall to HR, accounting, marketing, and tell them to figure it out. After one of the bigger deals closed, the CEO from the acquired company walked up to him and said, we could have done that way better. You know, the process could have been much improved. And Matt took that feedback seriously. So that person is now running Oakbridge's integration function. They have a unique title because it's VP of New Partner Operations. But what that role actually does, it's one person that quarterbacks every deal from pre-LOI diligence all the way through the first 90 days post-close. Same person, end to end, sits on every diligence call, tracks every work stream, manages every transition, no handoff, no baton. So I use a quote I got from Matt was that all the knowledge built during diligence carries directly into integration because he's been involved from the start. When the broader integration team steps in, there's no gap. That's what threading a deal past close looks like in practice. It's one person, one model, one continuous work stream. Define your post-close team during diligence, not after signing. Model that priced the deal becomes the model that runs the integration. It's the same people in the same room, same artifact, living. That's how you're going to keep this thread past close. The deal doesn't end at signing. It ends with the last assumption you wrote down on day one, either held or didn't. And if you weren't holding the thread, you'll never know which one it was. That's the talk. 3 places where the thread either holds or breaks, where it starts, the thesis that travels, where it gets tested, diligence is the rehearsal, where it survives or dies, and the close isn't the handoff. And one idea underneath all of it is that seller-led M&A is a relay race. Buyer-led M&A is one continuous deal. The difference isn't tactics, it isn't frameworks. It's not the size of your team. It's whether the thread holds.